Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to the 888 Align podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Hanna. I'm a serial entrepreneur who likes to immerse into many facets of life, focusing on growth, mindset, healing, and soul alignment. 8 represents strength, prosperity, balance, power, overcoming, stability, and to me, the yin and yang of life. Pain weaves the gratitude for the beauty in life and appreciation for our generational evolution. You're in the right place if you're looking to dive deeper into finding meaning within yourself and your life experiences, work towards transforming into and aligning with your highest version of yourself, take action steps towards building and creating the life of your dreams, as well as explore discussions on health and wellness, balance, self-care, plus areas like travel, fashion, art, culture, manifestation, entrepreneurship, and even a little spirituality. To be 888 aligned means to be aligning to your strongest and most powerful and enlightened version of yourself. To continue to evolve and always be open to growth while staying true to your core values and individuality. Let's get started with this week's alignment. Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome back to 888 Aligned, and happy Monday. Thank you for taking the time to check out the podcast and tune in as always. Today, I wanted to talk about helpful tips and how-tos and when to let go and detach during the holidays. Because the holidays can be really rough for some of us. Sometimes we dread the holidays for one reason or another, whether it's politics, personal family issues, or just personal life, or sometimes somebody we don't always get along with within our family or family friends, whatever it is. I think a lot of times we don't know what to say or how to handle it, and then we either get caught into a conversation we didn't anticipate, or we feel awkward, argumentative, defensive, whatever it is. So, if you're either the black sheep of the family or the one who everyone expects something from when they see them, or just simply having differing opinions from those at your family gatherings, then this episode is for you. And if you struggle with protecting your peace and energy to maintain feeling good without overdoing it and people pleasing throughout the night all the way up until you head home, this episode is also for you. So I want to give you some tips and tricks to make the holidays a little bit easier, as well as give you some new perspectives that may help you embody more of your own personal power. So with that, let's get into today's episode. All right, so if you're someone who struggles with get-togethers with family, friends, or whatever it is over the holidays for you, the first thing I want you to do is set an energetic boundary for yourself before you attend your next holiday party. So what does that mean or look like? When you're home before you leave earlier that day, or even the day before, I want you to set yourself up for success. What are some things, first of all, that you do for yourself on a regular basis that make you feel good and make you feel like your best self? Maybe that's taking a nice long shower, doing your hair and makeup, picking out an outfit you feel good in, and taking your time with a slow routine to get ready. Maybe that's listening to some of your favorite music, reading a good book, writing in your journal. Maybe you're someone who needs to work out, meditate, and eat or drink a healthy meal or supplement ahead of time. Maybe you're someone who needs to hop on a therapy call and talk preemptively about some things you're worried about to get it out of the way ahead of time. This is really about any routine that makes you feel good. And what is it? And if you don't have one, I'm obviously going to tell you, you need to start building a self-care routine. And maybe that will be another separate episode. We'll go over like the steps to take to build one for yourself and how to discover what is the best type of routine for you. And not one that is just based on wants, but also the things you know will make you feel good, energized, clear-minded, and happy. Even if it's sometimes things you don't always feel like doing, but you know are good for you. You want to make a point to get into a frequency that makes you feel good, a high frequency that will not match the potential lower frequencies you could be met with. And after you do this routine, I want you to set an energetic boundary. So I want you, before you head out, to picture a powerful golden bubble around you. You can think of this as something that moves with you wherever you go and is your shield. No one and nothing can penetrate through this golden shield around you. This is your energetic boundary. And within your energetic boundary, I want you to think about how your high frequency you just created with your really great and amazing self-care routine for yourself gets locked in with you inside this golden shield. Anything that may be negative and lower of a frequency, imagine that it will all just bounce off of this shield and it won't even touch you. Every single time something comes your way, it bounces right off of you. And this will stay with you all night long. And when you set the intention that it's there and you know it's there for yourself, this is a type of self-empowerment and self-control over your own energy that you set for yourself that you can rely on. Now, for those of you who don't spend time diving into this kind of thing, maybe you think it's a little too spiritual for you or whatever it is, or you have different beliefs and may find it different or strange, just give it a try. You are an energetic being. We as humans are literally made up scientifically of energy. So you can admit different kinds of energy, and that is backed by science. So for those of you who are more science-based, I won't go into this today, but maybe in another episode we can break down the science behind the energy in our bodies. Okay, so we've done our self-care routine. We've set our golden bubble that shields and protects us while locking in our high frequency. Next, set a time you arrive and leave. These are boundaries, and you can do this respectfully while also protecting yourself. I've always struggled with boundaries my whole life, and it's really incredibly important for you to have personal boundaries rather than just people-pleasing during the holidays. Yes, we can still show up, help our loved ones, enjoy time together while also having boundaries that protect our peace and prevent stress and maybe even triggers after the fact. So figure out your schedule and communicate to those you're visiting about the window you're coming in for, and then stick to that boundary. If you need to make up an excuse why you have to arrive late or leave early, it's okay. If this is going to help your mental and emotional health, guess what? It's okay. We do not need to overextend ourselves for other people to be happier than ourselves. And it is acceptable to show up, spend time with your loved ones, and also make sure you're okay. Remember that, preach that, put it into place, and practice that. We need to put the days of people pleasing behind us. And this isn't to say you shouldn't spend time with your family and friends or whoever is important in your life to you. You absolutely should show the people you love in your life that you care. That's a given here. And I'm not saying to be completely selfish either. And for those of you who don't know how to show up for others in your life at all, that is for a different episode and a different time. This is for all my people pleasers out there who get overwhelmed and push themselves too much to give all they can and all the energy they possibly have to everyone else, leave nothing for themselves, and then they feel like shit by the end of the night. Don't do that anymore. It's totally okay to set a boundary and have balance. The balance, in fact, is incredibly important to incorporate for everything in life, and especially with the holidays coming up. People-pleasing is an overuse of your own energy to make someone else feel good while draining yourself, making yourself not feel good, putting yourself last, and putting your own happiness last. And we can do both. We can show those that we love that we care about them while also showing ourselves we care about our own self and that we prioritize ourselves. And by the way, if people start to get uncomfortable or annoyed with your new strategy to take a step back, guess what? They are going to have to get used to it. And they will be okay without your help and presence every second of the way. Yes, there are certain circumstances that warrant a different response and strategy, and that's based on your own life and your own experiences. And I'm not talking about very specific situations that require different kind of approaches. In the general sense, if you know people will be okay without you and will make do on their own with your new boundaries, and you're just simply overextending yourself because you've been told to do so or because you're used to doing it, and you just never knew how to set up a boundary, or you're just expected to do it, but you really don't need to, please stop. Make time for yourself to recuperate and re-energize. We as people pleasers tend to think it's not important because it is for ourselves, but start making it a habit and piece of your knowledge for yourself to know that you need time to decompress too. We usually, as people pleasers, do not think we need the time to do anything. And then we're burnt out. And then we're kind of forced sometimes because we either get sick or stressed or overworked or burnt out to take a step back and have a rest day. And we don't actually get to enjoy the rest days because we're recuperating from everything we just lost all of our energy to. Start making it a habit to actually set aside time for yourself to relax, to decompress, to do the things that are part of your self-care routine. Okay, next. Take some time before you go to think about topics that may cause some difficulty for you. If these are topics you do not want to engage in, talk about, or be questioned about for one reason or another, spend some time taking note on these. Maybe even make a list on your phone to look over and come up with a strategy to either evade the conversation, set a boundary on these topics, or look at them from a more enlightened perspective. And I'm going to break down each one of these. But guess what? If you want to avoid these topics for the sake of your mental health, this is totally okay too. You don't owe anyone anything. If you have areas in your life you're uncomfortable talking about and don't want to share about, then take the time to acknowledge what those are so you can walk in prepared to either walk away, deflect, change topics, or excuse yourself, or even discuss with boundaries. Some people, for instance, may be asked about their love life. When are you getting married? When are you going to have kids? How's school going? What's the job hunt like? If you have your own business, how is the business going? Whatever it is. If these are topics you want to keep private, guess what? You have every right to do so. You do not owe anyone any explanation. And of course, there's going to be a million other topics. Those are just some. But again, your personal life, what's going on in your life, whatever it is, like you do not owe people explanations just because they are asking. I used to struggle with going to holidays or get-togethers with friends and family because when I started out as a young entrepreneur, I got critiqued and criticized every second about everything I was doing. And it happened in this rotation with every person I said hello to and started a conversation with. I would think they were just asking out of intrigue and support just to catch up. And sure, some people were, but then there were those, and of course, plenty of them, who just wanted to judge me, give me their 2 cents, make me feel less than them, and so on. And not only did this exhaust the crap out of me, it made me feel like shit, unmotivated, triggered, defensive, angry, and by the end of the night, I was a wreck thinking of every conversation I had and what they had to say about me and what I was doing. And there's 2 things here. 1, you do not need to tell anyone anything about the things they ask about that you don't want to talk about. I made that mistake just being young and naive and not realizing that I wasn't going to get the support and excitement and just a bunch of cheerleaders, frankly, when I decided to talk about all the adventures of what being an entrepreneur had been like so far for me. 2, if you decide to talk about something, realize that people will give you feedback. You're opening the conversation to that feedback, and when you engage in a conversation with someone, right, it's almost like giving your consent to speak about the topic. When you start talking about it with someone and engaging in a conversation, more often than not, people will not say, may I give my opinion on this? No, they're likely going to just give it because you started a conversation with them or because they started the conversation and you answered and now they're coming back with more feedback. And it's often assumed that if you're talking about it, then feedback can be given. And this is at least how it works in American culture. I won't speak to other cultures and countries. And yes, I've experienced plenty of different conversations with those from different countries and cultures and the other social cues that are quite different. And you may find that sometimes people will not give their feedback without being asked, or that someone will be polite enough to ask if you'd like some. Some will be mixed. Maybe even in your own cultures at home, you have different experiences. But for the sake of this type of situation, let's look at it like this. The aspect of feedback in a conversation is just something we should look at in a technical way, almost to prevent ourselves from getting emotionally fired up with anything. Look at it as if the word feedback is unbiased, right? So the word itself, the technicality of it, will not choose whether to be good or bad. It will just be whatever comes out of that person, if that makes sense. And by viewing it this way, this is a form of detachment. This way, whether it's good or bad, you will not be affected. The feedback will not always be what you're looking for or what makes sense or what makes you feel good. Sometimes you might agree, sometimes you won't agree. Sometimes it's not going to be nice at all. And it's simply just feedback because what it is based off of that person's perception and your perception. So use your golden bubble shield and let that feedback that you don't want to receive bounce right off from you and return to sender. And as a side note, this is a good reference to one of my episodes, episode 4, titled Not Everyone is Going to Like You, if you want to dive more into this area. So when it comes to basically feedback in a conversation, if you choose to engage in these types of conversations, automatically kind of expect that someone will give some form of feedback, right? So it could be good, it could be bad. What you choose to say is what your perception, your belief, and your life experiences are based off of. It's your own technical projection of things. So remember that on the other side of that conversation is someone who's going to have their own life experiences, perception, and projection of things. So they're also going to project something. You guys will not always match up. And if you don't, realize that ahead of time, acknowledge that this can happen ahead of time so you don't go through a hard time in those conversations, especially if you're someone who is less confident, maybe more of an introvert, maybe more insecure or has imposter syndrome or just feels confused about what's going on in their life around this topic, and you choose to start getting into these conversations. Set up the boundaries ahead of time with your own knowledge and protection of how to enter into these conversations and your perspective of how to think about these conversations so you do not get negatively impacted by what other people have to say and the words that they choose to say them with. And this goes along with my next step, which is remembering that everyone has their own experience and perspective of life. So acknowledging when someone is projecting onto you what they've been through and how they've experienced life, and it's most certainly not always at all going to be how you experience life. Don't allow the words to take power over you, right? So I kind of just said this, but it's really important as its own thing. One, viewing feedback as if it's a neutral thing, right? So it could be good, it could be bad. That's what feedback is. Then understanding the idea that everyone has their own experience, perspective, and projection on life. And therefore, to have your own power in place, acknowledge that is going to happen likely in conversations. People tend to get an ego boost when they can talk about themselves in a way that puts themselves above someone else. And usually this is done subconsciously, right? And pairing with that in a way that allows them to be a bigger victim of life over you as well. Some common phrases you could hear would be, "Oh, I've been through it so much harder than what you're going through right now. You'll be fine." Or, "Oh, when I was your age, I was married, bought a house, had kids, a full-time job. You have it easy." Or, "You're lucky you get to work for yourself. You must enjoy being at home and having all of your extra free time. I have to work such long hours, drive to work, and I have no time for myself. I'm always so exhausted. I'm so busy with my kids. You're lucky you still have your own time for yourself and to do whatever you want." The list goes on and on. And yes, there's a time for genuine conversation to empathize for each other for something someone is going through. And there's a time to acknowledge that someone just feels like having an ego victimhood contest with you. When this is happening, I encourage you to either find an excuse to leave the conversation or just ignore it and realize that this is someone who just wants to compare, maybe is just not feeling good about themselves, is projecting, and not really there to have a meaningful conversation with you to see how you're doing and how you each are doing. It's more just they're just ranting and venting about their own life and really just having a very subconscious conversation. Well, it could be subconscious and conscious, frankly, but it's clearly coming from a place of victimhood, comparison, and projection. And moving on to the next area of types of conversations, when you get into the types of conversations that are more like pressures, like when are you having kids? When are you moving out? When are you going to get a job? When are you going to get married? Whatever it is, there's a couple of ways to go about this. First off, sometimes I like to just make jokes. But in all seriousness, when you lighten the mood, sometimes people just tend to go with whatever the next topic of conversation is, and you can easily evade the conversation altogether. Sometimes, it's just literally a conversation filler. So if it's that kind of situation, just kind of make a joke and, the conversation will move along. Other times, I'll give a very vague and quick answer and then turn the conversation on to that person and ask them about themselves. People love talking about themselves. If you want to keep the attention off of you, come prepared with questions you can ask other people, and you can really take control over the conversation. And lastly, if you're having a hard time, just set up a strong boundary. You can either state, "You know what, I don't want to talk about this right now," or "That matter is private for me right now." What I would love to hear you get to is stating your own boundaries out loud. But if that's too harsh and quick and uncomfortable for you, then you can try these little tips and tricks. You can come up with an excuse to just walk away, like, oh, I have to run to the bathroom, we'll chat later. Or, oh, I'm getting a call, I have to answer this quickly. You could even text someone like to call you really quickly, to make it seem more legitimate. If you have kids, you can say, oh, my kid needs me 1 sec. Or if you have an older grandparent, oh, let me go check and make sure so-and-so, doesn't need my help with this. Whatever it is, sometimes a healthy excuse to excuse yourself for some breathing room is totally acceptable, okay, and normal if you're too uncomfortable stating your boundary. But certainly work on getting there. Remember, we are not perfect, but it's important to work on embodying personal self-empowerment for ourselves so that we can feel like our strongest selves and support ourselves. It's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you have to take baby steps, take baby steps. I'm a strong proponent of little steps sometimes because some people tell you to totally change 180, and frankly, that's not for everyone. Sometimes some people can and others can't, and then they just don't. So take baby steps. If you need to do these other kinds of excuses rather than stating out loud a strict boundary, then do that to start off. And stating boundaries is not rude. Culturally or within certain family dynamics, people may take it as rude, but whatever. They will get used to it. And if they don't, then too bad. If you're doing what is best for you, then that is all that matters. And they can love you for just being you and showing up to spend your time with them. It may not be that easy in the beginning, but it will get easier and better. And if it doesn't get better, then frankly, just realize that you are doing the best you can and you are also doing what is best for you, and while also giving love. And that is all that matters at the end of the day. And again, if you want to avoid that for now, try those other things. Okay, so for setting ourselves up for success for the holidays, we have getting ourselves into a good self-care routine before the holiday, creating an energetic, powerful gold bubble shield around ourselves and locking in our high frequency alignment, setting a time schedule for ourselves to not drain ourselves and over people please, acknowledging and taking note of conversations that may come up to prepare ourselves and set up boundaries of how we would handle these conversations if they came up, and realizing that feedback and projection will likely happen with the people around us. And it's important to detach ourselves from that fact and look at it from a higher perspective of that people are just people with egos and life experiences that are different than our own. If you set yourself up in this way, I know you will have an easier time than usual depending on what you perceive will work best for you and putting it into action. From one working to be a former people pleaser to another, make sure you prioritize yourself this holiday season. You can still give love to others while making sure you are good, stable, and in a good, happy headspace for yourself first. All right, thanks for listening in to episode 10 and getting into that 888 alignment. Stay tuned for next week's episode. I'll chat with you guys next time. Thank you for listening into the 888 Align podcast. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. I would really appreciate that to help the growth of the podcast. If you want to check out more and join the 888 Align community, you can give the podcast a follow on all social platforms at 888 Aligned Podcast.